Hi everyone, my name is Samuel, and today I'll be walking you through the portfolio tracker that I've built for QUAAF. This model uses the Capital IQ Excel plugin to fetch live data on a daily basis. So if you want to use this model, make sure you have the plugin downloaded and installed. Also, because this is such a large model, it takes about 5 minutes to load when you first open it. So don't panic if your computer freezes for a few minutes. That's normal. Once you have it loaded, it runs fairly quick. The file itself has well over 2 million formulas and can handle up to 100 positions and 1,000 transactions. This is only the second version of the model. I just finished building it a few weeks ago, so I'm sure future students will be able to modify it and make it work faster and more efficiently. Today, I'll be showing you what it does, how to use it, and maybe skim through some of the back-end technical stuff at the end. All right, so this is the portfolio dashboard. All of the visuals and data tables you see here are fully automated and updated on a daily basis through Capital IQ. And all of the calculations and charts are completely dynamic, meaning that you never have to update any of the formulas or manually enter any data. The only thing you have to do is enter your trades into a transactions log. So anytime you execute a new trade, you simply enter the trade details in the yellow cells over here. Now, the problem is that whenever you enter anything into a cell in Excel, it triggers the entire file to recalculate itself. And because this is such a large file, that recalculation process can take a minute or two. So there is a simple trick I'm going to show you that will help you speed things up and also prevent the model from freezing or crashing. And I'll show you how to do this at the end of the video. First, let's go over the dashboard. So the dashboard essentially tracks a wide range of performance metrics, risk statistics, and exposure levels across different time periods. Now you'll notice some of the tables and charts have these drop-down menus next to them. These do not trigger Excel to recalculate the entire file, so feel free to use these as much as you want. You don't need to worry about it crashing or freezing the model. So below over here, we have a performance summary table broken down by time period. We can view the performance of the portfolio as a whole, or we can select an individual position. And as you can see, I've made table and chart fully dynamic based on whatever selection you make. On the left side over here is another cool feature I've made that's a mini earnings calendar. It uses a special Capital IQ formula to fetch the next three upcoming earnings dates for our portfolio holdings. A full calendar is available for all of our positions at the very bottom of this dashboard that you'll see towards the end. Next, in this section, we have on the left a comparison chart that I've made that shows us how our portfolio performed versus a hypothetical equivalent S&P portfolio. So assuming we bought and sold the S&P in the exact same amounts and times as our actual trades. To the right of that, we have a sector exposure breakdown, and next to that, we have a monthly dividend income breakdown for the last 6 months. Again, these charts are fully dynamic and will automatically update themselves on a daily basis. So in the section below over here, we can see the portfolio performance broken down by position for a specific time period. So right now it's set to 1 year. Let's select 30 days, for example. We can see the performance breakdown for a selected time period, different highlights for that same time period, as well as a dynamic P&L chart on the bottom right corner here. Next, we have this section that groups our holdings by sector. So we can see how our exposures to each sector has been performing over a specific time period. In this case, it's set to 1 year. Let's set it to 30 days. And we can see that we also have another dynamic P&L chart on the right side here. And aside from selecting a time period, you can also select to view a specific sector. So let's choose financials, for example, financial sector. Okay, so now we can see the combined 30-day performance of all of our holdings in the financial sector. It's a great way to quickly understand which sectors are driving performance and where you might want to rebalance. Okay, next we have a few bar charts that simply show us a visual breakdown of our capital gains or losses and dividend income for 20 positions at a time. You can change that using this drop-down menu over here. And below that, we have a master table showing all of our current holdings along with key metrics for each position. And finally, there is a table that tracks all of our realized gains and losses. This includes fully closed positions as well as any partial exits. And at the very bottom over here, we have a calendar section that's still a work in process. I planned on building an economic calendar that would pull in the latest values of key macro indicators along with their upcoming release dates. But I ran into some issues with the capital IQ formulas that can do that. So I wasn't able to get it fully functional. But if you're interested, this could be a great feature for you to try and build out. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the dashboard. Let me take you back to the transactions log and show you how to enter new trades into the log. So the first thing you want to do is go to the top ribbon bar over here and select the Formulas tab. Once you have the Formulas tab selected, click on Calculation Options, and you'll see that by default, it's set to automatic. And we're going to change that to manual just to allow us to enter the trade details. So click manual. Okay. And now we can go ahead and type in the trade details. Now, this will prevent Excel from recalculating the entire sheet every time you enter data into a cell, except for the first entry you make. So for the first entry, it will cause Excel to recalculate itself. So it will get frozen for 30 seconds to a minute, and then it will work smoothly afterwards. So let's say we had a trade on May 1st, 2025. I put in the date, I hit enter, and it's frozen. So now it's going to essentially recalculate the entire file, and it'll get unfrozen in about 30 seconds to a minute. So let's just give it some time. And I guess while we're waiting, you can see that I left a little summary of the instructions for these steps in case you forget or in case you don't watch this mini tutorial video. All right, so now that it's unfrozen, you can see that we can type anything we want into any of the other cells, and we're not triggering the file to recalculate itself. So now we can enter the rest of the data without having any problems. So ticker, let's say we bought Dollarama. So we'll put the Dollarama ticker, TSX, DOL. Transaction type, buy. Number of shares, let's say 20. And execution price, let's say $170. Canadian. Okay, now that we've entered the transaction details, you can go back to the formulas tab at the top here, click calculation options, and set it back to automatic. So now we're clicking automatic, and the file will recalculate itself again. And you can see that these blue cells over here automatically populated themselves uh, with our data. And the last thing we have to do is enter a sector classification. So this yellow column over here, I've intentionally left it as a manual input just because the way Capital IQ classifies sectors isn't always the way that you want to classify them. So for example, you'll notice that ETFs are always classified as financials. But of course, you don't want your utilities ETF to be classified as a, exposure to the financial sector. You'd probably want it classified as a being part of the utility sector. So the last part is entering a sector classification at the end here. And let's say Capital IQ classified Dollarama as consumer discretionary, but let's say you want to classify it as consumer staple. You type in consumer staple and hit enter, and you'll get this error. And I've made this error message over here basically to force the user to enter the sector classification in the correct format. You have to enter the classification in this specific format. So this is just to help the model work. If you don't enter it in a specific format, the model won't work properly. So for consumer staples, you can see that you'd have to enter CS. For consumer discretionary, CD, or for communications, you would enter COMM. So it forces you to enter the classification in the correct format. So let's click retry and write the correct format for consumer staples as CS and hit enter. And we see that there's no error message and it's working fine. And that's it. We've entered a new transaction into the log. If you go back to the dashboard, you can see that Dollarama has been added to this drop-down menu at the bottom here, TSX, DOL, and it's been fully integrated into the portfolio tracker. And that's it for entering new transactions. I guess we could go over some of the backend stuff very quickly just to wrap it up. So the way that the model works, there's a main engine that makes all sorts of calculations, and this engine is essentially linked to many different databases that I've created, live databases, and the databases are all in these separate sheets you see at the bottom here. So you see data, risk, dividends, charting, stock splits, so on and so forth. So let's go to data, for example. Um, the way that the data is structured is basically a collection of 25 different data tables where each table has 100 slots for 100 different positions. So you can see the position number here, 1, 2, 3, and it goes all the way to 100. Of course, we don't have 100 different positions, so these are all blank. It might look like blank cells, but all of these cells actually have formulas in them for whenever you might enter that many positions. And each table goes all the way up to December 31st, 2026. And just to show you a few tables, for example, so this one shows us quantities for each day. This one is showing us prices on each day. We have values, dividends. Dividends is actually linked to a separate database called dividends. You can see at the bottom here. And yeah, there's 20 more of these giant data tables, cash flows, uh, daily gains and losses, excluding dividends, and this goes on and on. There are a few sections here for calculating dynamic performance metrics and So on for risk, for example, if we go to the risk sheet, um, you'll notice, I actually did this throughout the model. You'll notice I put in kind of notes along the way. So here I put in a note that for the portfolio variance, I of course used this famous shortcut formula using matrix multiplication, and that's linked to this variance covariance matrix that can handle 100 different pairs. And yeah, it might look like all these cells are empty, but again, these cells are all filled with formulas, and it's fully dynamic. You never have to update it or touch it. Uh, it's linked to the transactions log and to the data sheet. So whenever you enter a new trade, this gets updated automatically. And of course, it's converted to a correlation matrix over here. And then we get a lot of interesting insights like our minimum and maximum correlation pairs. And I think this is enough for the kind of the back end technical stuff. Um, if you do have any questions or you want to talk to me about how it works or any technical questions at all, feel free to reach out to me. My email is over here on the cover page. Um, yeah, I've had a great time building this model, so I'll be more than happy to hear from you guys. And I'd like to give a special thanks to Alex, Thomas, and Daniel for teaching my cohort how to use the Capital IQ Excel plugin. I think it's one of the most useful tools I've ever came across. So I hope this was helpful, and thanks for watching.